Christians often say that Jesus was a good man. Jesus was without sin. But there's a number of cases where Jesus was not a good man. In one of his sermons, the Sermon on the Mount, where he says, if someone strikes you, turn the other cheek. If someone robs you, offer him your coat. And I put it to you that this is immoral. And we know from all kinds of experiments, we know from child raising, that if you punish something, you're going to be weakening. If somebody has a behavior and you punish that behavior, it will make them do that less. Not only am I going to let you get away with that robbery, I'm going to give you my coat too. I'm rewarding this antisocial behavior. Rewarding antisocial behavior will encourage more antisocial behavior, and that's immoral. So turn the other cheek, give him your coat, that's immoral. Jesus did other things that were immoral too. Because he was hungry and there was no figs, he killed the tree. It's someone else's tree. Jesus didn't own anything, so maybe some farmer's tree. May have been a wild tree, but may have been a farmer's tree. The Bible doesn't say. But he killed the tree, and that means no one else can eat from that tree either. Now, what kind of a person throws a temper tantrum? A child. Immature. And certainly not a good person. More of an evil person. Jesus also said you got to hate your family. Hate your mother, brother, sister, and even your own life if you're going to follow me. If you interpret it on its face, it means one thing. Cut your ties to your existing life and follow him. That sounds like a cult leader. That sounds like Jim Jones. That doesn't sound like a good man. Cut your ties to your family. In another place, Jesus is talking to a bunch of people, and Mary and his brothers are outside. And somebody says to him, Jesus, your family's outside. And he goes, my family and my mother are here. Basically, he's, again, emphasizing cut the ties to the family. And then Jesus says, you got to eat my flesh and drink my blood. He actually says that several times, like those very phrases, eat my flesh, drink my blood. That's pretty emphatic. Whether or not he actually means cannibalism, that's kind of what he's saying. So he's talking about cannibalism. He's talking about cutting your ties to your existing family. He throws a temper tantrum and kills a tree. He encourages antisocial behavior. How are these good? What exactly did Jesus do that was good? He cured the sick. He didn't cure disease in general. He didn't get rid of disease. So even accepting what the Bible says is true, how do you say it's good? Christ's sacrifice. What exactly was Christ's sacrifice supposed to be? I mean, he was dead, supposedly, for 3 days. That's it. And then he came back. And he was alive for 40 days, wandering around talking to people, and then he went to heaven, wherever that is. So when you sacrifice something, in the times of the Old Testament, when they sacrificed an animal, that meant taking a valuable, because they always wanted blemish-free, so like a perfect, pristine animal, and you sacrifice it, that means you don't have it anymore. It's gone. And that's what we mean today. When you make a sacrifice, you sacrifice your time or whatever, that means you're giving it up. It is gone. What did Jesus sacrifice? Well, supposedly his life, except that he didn't. He was dead for 3 days and then he's back. So what sacrifice was it? The life of a freaking carpenter? He never actually did any carpenting. I don't know why they call him a carpenter. He was just basically a wandering street preacher. So he's a street preacher, and he gave up that life to go live in heaven with God. That's like saying it's a sacrifice for me to accept $1 billion and to go live in Italy. He was down for 3 days. When somebody dies now, they're gone. They're down forever. And you want to know a true sacrifice? Pat Tillman was an NFL star who gave his life. Well, he signed up for the army, and he died in Afghanistan. Now, he was a war protester. He was against the war, but he was also a patriot. So although he was against the war, he joined up the army, gave up a profitable NFL career, and went over to Afghanistan and was killed by friendly fire. He was shot 3 times in the forehead from 10 meters away from one of his other buddies. I'm going to put my life on something. This is it. This is all I've got to give. I'm not going on to some greater reward. I'm not going to get some heaven or whatever to join the army or to do something life-threatening, to put other people's lives ahead of your life. That is a true sacrifice. Even Christians, they supposedly believe they're going to heaven afterwards. So if they're putting life on the line, it's not that much of a sacrifice to them because they believe they're moving on to some ultimate reward. Although most Christians I've seen, I don't think they really believe that. This church collapsed, or the interior of the church collapsed, and 40 Christians were hurt, and the headline of this, I didn't want to die. Why not? You're going to heaven. Why wouldn't you want to die? At least the Muslims have the courage of their convictions. Now, not that I agree with any religion, but at least the Muslims apparently believe they're going to heaven. So anyway, what was Christ's sacrifice? 3 days of inactivity? That's basically he took a long weekend. That's a sacrifice? That is the atonement for all the world's sins? Now, I tell you a sacrifice that's real. If Christ went to hell for eternity and stayed in hell for eternity, and he was burning for everybody's sins, that would be a sacrifice. That would be the ultimate sacrifice. But to be out of action for 3 days, out of his crappy street preacher life, and then to head up to heaven and to now rule the entire universe. So the only real place in the Old Testament where the Satan does anything is in the book of Job. And the book of Job, it starts out with him just walking up and down earth, and then he encounters God somewhere. And God gets all egotistical about how Job is really worshipful of him and everything. And Satan's like, well, duh, look what he's got. But I bet if you let me take his stuff away, he'll curse your name. So God says, you're on. So makes a bet with Satan. Now, of course, if God is supposed to be omniscient, he would know, and he would just say, whatever, shut the fuck up, you stupid Satan, because I already know I'm God and I know everything. But no, he takes the bet. And anyway, he takes the bet, and Satan causes these raiders or marauders to take all of his livestock. He's got like 15,000 llama or 5,000 llama. He's got llama and sheep and cows and whatever. He's got livestock, lots of it. It all gets taken. His family, his kids are murdered. There's like 14 kids. And I think his house is burned to the ground. So basically, the stuff around him, his stuff and his family, are removed. So he's left penniless and familyless. But remember, this is what God said to do. So this is God's commandment. So again, Satan is just acting as an agent for God, because God said, yeah, take it away. We'll see. So anyway, this stuff gets taken away, and Job does not curse God's name. And God says, see? And then Satan says, well, let me give him some diseases, and then he'll curse your name. So God says, okay, as if, like, I guess I don't know what's going to happen, so let's see. So he's not omniscient. So then Satan gives him the diseases, and he doesn't curse God's name. And then God gives him his stuff back, but not his family. So that's it. The only thing in the Old Testament that the devil actually does is he kind of messes around with Job's life. That's it. And he's doing it on a bet with God, and he's doing it at God's commandment. So how evil is the devil, really? And then in the New Testament, the only place he appears is, he appears in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but they're all really talking about the same event, which is the temptation of Christ. Satan, all he's done directly is just to Job and his family. That's it. Anything else, he's just acting as like a lawyer or a prosecutor, and he's tells David to do the census against the Israelites and accuses Joshua. That's it. This is it. This is the most evil. This is the very embodiment of evil. That's it. That's ridiculous. Come on. I mean, John Milton has a much more interesting Satan than the Satan in the Bible. This guy does nothing. But God, just the flood alone. When Cain murders Abel, then God is wandering around going, where's Abel? Well, duh, you knew what was going to happen. You knew what would happen, and then he curses Cain. Like, what the fuck? What kind of a retarded thing is that? That's evil, right? If you know that the results of what you're going to do are going to cause one person to kill another person, technically innocent people, you're just made one man a murderer through your asshole actions. Why not just honor both? So, anyway, God was really a dick. A complete asshole right there. And then, in the flood, he murders everyone. And then you've got, in Egypt, he kills all the firstborn. These are babies. They did nothing. And they get all killed. And God hardens the heart of Pharaoh when the Jews wanted to leave. He impinges on Pharaoh's free will and causes all this extra problems, and then does the plagues, etc. Let's completely ignore the fact that there is no evidence for the Jews ever actually having been in Egypt. That's all just made up. But just going from the story's merits on its own, or the story on its own, God was completely evil because, he's caused all kinds of, if you look through, there's massacre after massacre, there's genocide after genocide. There's even places where God says, kill all the men, take the women and children for yourself, implying sexual slavery. So I would say that the God of the Bible is a horrible, evil creature, and Satan was just like a guy. He didn't really do much. He's not evil at all, really. At worst, he's a bit naughty. Betting the devil, or betting God that Job would curse his name. Other than that, devil's not much. So, there we go. The God of the Bible is far worse than the devil.